Hello again. Welcome to part 3 of Closing the Confidence Gap, how to boost your potential at work. I'm Kelli Thompson. I'm a women's leadership coach. I'm a speaker, and I am the author of Closing the Confidence Gap, Boost Your Peace, Your Potential, and Your Paycheck. And so over the last couple of weeks, I've been breaking down some of the big ideas in this book. The first week, I talked about boosting your peace at work. Actually, the first week we talked about the confidence gap and just some overview of the book. And then the first week was boosting your peace at work. And then this week we're going to talk about boosting your potential at work. And then next week we're going to talk about boosting your paycheck at work. So the book officially launches on November 1st. Although folks are sending me their little Amazon screenshots, they're actually going to get the book a little sooner. So that's always exciting. But today, let's talk about boosting your potential at work. So if you're here, you can say hello. You can drop me a little emoji. That way I know that there's actually folks out there in the universe. And if you have questions as I'm talking about these things, I would love to hear them as well. So let's talk a little bit about potential. And I think to talk about potential, I want to revisit something I talked about in week 1, and all of those replays are available on either this platform or on YouTube. I talked a lot about, one of the important things about boosting women's potential at work is that we need to see more women in leadership. And this is not like the future is all female sort of battle cry. I don't believe in that. I believe that there needs to be equal representation. A question that I always really love to ask or think about is, does your leadership team reflect the diversity of your customer base? And I think that, one, makes sure that you have folks that are in tune with your customer base. And my hunch is that your customer base is quite diverse. And so I want to just address this from a systemic perspective, that I think for women to reach their full potential at work, that they can see themselves in positions of in leadership, that they can see women using healthy self-promotion and advocacy, that they can see what women's leadership looks like. And there's mentors and there's coaches and there's pathways. There's interesting statistics, and I don't remember who just said it, that came out that said, actually, when women have support groups in the workplace, and they, these groups are sponsored by women, that women flourish in the workplace and they do reach their potential and they do build skills because it creates safe containers in which we can talk about things that are important for women at work. So let's dive into some of the key themes. I'm going to be talking about chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 7 today. So chapter 3, and again, if I haven't showed you the inside of the book, my publisher did a little awesome job, including the little pink end sheets. Chapter 3 is It Pays to Be Yourself. So the whole concept of this book is I talk a lot about my own journey with really maybe learning through, struggling through some gender norms in terms of what is expected for women. And I think that, and tell me, just give me a thumbs up or whatever, if you've experienced this, or I think that I talk about in this chapter, these gender norms can go both ways. So for example, lots of times when women are direct, as I was always called, I was too direct, when they are assertive or they are aggressive, a typically masculine quality, they can be penalized in the workplace in terms of likability. And when they're not likable, that can influence not only their performance reviews, but it can impact their promotion ability as well. And, on the flip side of that, I also talk about gender norms in terms of, the male environment, in that, when men show up maybe more emotional, more collaborative, more soft, more sensitive, they can also be penalized as well because they aren't showing up in the traditional norms in which they've been expected to be at work or be in leadership. And then I say, instead of adhering to a certain set of standards that people should use and say, oh, if you're a leader, you need to have these 10 qualities. Well, according to whom? Because one of the things I argue for in the book is that people can kind of snuff out when you're not being authentic. And in fact, there was a lot of research, and one of them done, by Harvard, that says, when you do show up to job interviews and you don't show up as your authentic self, people can kind of like feel that out. And you're not hired as frequently when people show up to job interviews and they do put on and bring their full authentic self. So chapter 3, the bottom line is, when you show up like someone else, because you feel like you need to be that to get promoted, to be seen, whatever, you actually just give away your power. You give away your power that makes you, you. And so I give a framework in chapter 3 that says, how can you own that unique thing about you? And I would encourage you, you can tell me in the comments or just make a note. I ask you, what have you always been called growing up? I was always called direct or unemotional. Some people were called talkative or bossy or assertive or gullible or, so many different words. Well, how is actually that your superpower? How has being sensitive allowed you to see the world differently, to accomplish really great things, to bring value where no one else can? How has being direct helped you? So instead of, self-censoring and really like working through all that energetic load, I don't know about you, give me a heart or whatever, but I really feel like that constant self-censoring of not showing up as who you really are is exhausting. And I talk to so many women, I know I've been through this personally, who are like, oh my God, I'm exhausted from self-censoring. I'm exhausted because I feel like I got to show up every day and pretend. And pretending is exhausting. So I encourage you to take that thing. So if I was always called that I was direct, well, how can I blend that in alignment with my leadership values, which is something that I talked about in chapter 1. Well, my values are love, respect, family, creativity, and learning. And so one of the things that I had to really think about was, well, how can I be direct and loving? Because being, what do they want to call it, brutally honest is really all not that helpful. It doesn't create a connection with someone that I'm working to build a relationship with. So how can I use my directness and be loving? How can I be direct and loving, direct and respectful, direct and creative about how I deliver my approach in a way that I know is going to meet the audience where it needs? So that's really chapter 3, is how to take those unique things, those unique ways of being about yourself, blending that with your values so that you're showing up as a leader in the world in a way that feels good for you, so you can show up, step into your own power and not give your power away by showing up like someone else. And then chapter 4 is all about aligning your purpose and your paycheck. That is the title of chapter 4, is align your purpose and your paycheck. And this chapter, the bottom line of it is really discovering your unique talents. I think it's so common when we're young in our careers, and tell me if this has happened to you, in our 20s, we say yes to a lot of things. I know I did. Because, you're young, you're still trying to figure it all out. And somebody taps you on the shoulder and they're like, hey, you should go for this promotion. You should take on this assignment. And you're like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. Sounds good. Maybe you get a pay raise, maybe you get a title bump. And, all of a sudden what I can start to see happening, and I know this happened to me, is you kind of just get into this weird spot where maybe you kind of get into the golden handcuffs a little bit. And you're making really good money, get a nice title, you work for a good company, and you're like, oh, but I am exhausted. It's a kind of burnout that you experience from a concept I call rust out. You're not burned out from almost doing too much work. You have rust out from not doing, like you're getting rusty. Like people tell me, and I know I felt this, I'm like, I feel like I show up every day and like, I'm not fully expressing myself. Like there's something left on the table. I'm not using my full talents at work. Like there's something that's left unexpressed, and it can kind of have that, I feel like I'm constantly pushing a rock uphill every day feeling. And I know I've experienced it. My clients have experienced it, and it can feel a lot like burnout. And I argue that if you want to reach your full potential at work, we need to get really clear about what our talents are that make up our zone of genius. And you can find your talents by starting to notice your energy. Like what lights you up at work? What do you just totally geek out about? Like what makes you feel most like you? Where do you lose track of time? And ask yourself like, well, how much time am I actually spending doing those things? And a lot of times when women are coming to me and they're really unhappy in their careers, they discover, oh my God, I'm only spending like 20% of my time in my genius zone, using my unique talents at work. It's no wonder I feel like I'm pushing a rock uphill. And they're like, you know what? I'm probably in a little bit of the golden handcuffs. The money is just too good to leave, and that's a whole other conversation. But, lots of times too, when they're not using their best talents at work, they're also like, gosh, I just feel a lot of doubt and imposter syndrome. So a big bottom line from this chapter is owning your talents is the antidote to imposter syndrome. Like when you can remember like what you've been put on this earth to do, and exactly what you contribute to your role, to your team. One, it really helps boost your confidence because you kind of don't fall into that compare and despair anymore. You're like, I know why I'm here. And number two, it helps you, instead of saying yes to everything, it helps you be a little bit more conscious and intentional about, am I saying yes to the right things? Am I actually creating a career that I love, or am I just kind of saying yes to things, hoping that it will stick? So that's chapter 4. And then the last chapter that it really comes about boosting your potential is chapter 7. And chapter 7 is amplify your voice and make an impact. And, this chapter, honestly, is the chapter that probably helped me write the book. As an introvert, I know that surprises a lot of people. If you know anything about the Enneagram, and I'm an Enneagram 5, so I can be very much in research mode and forget to actually speak up and say things. Takes a lot of energy for me to speak up. And I really had to think about at some point in my career, how do I use my voice and take up space? Because this is not easy for me. And so, but I wanted to do it in a way, kind of relating to chapter 3, that felt like me, because as an introvert, it was easy for me just to look up at the maybe 1 or 2 women, because I was in finance, that did have leadership positions, and be like, oh, I'll just copy them, copy the way they speak up, and then we'll be good, right? Because they've made it. But when I would try to copy their style in terms of speaking up and using my voice, I just came across awkward. It didn't feel good. It actually made me feel less confident, because I was always trying to like watch and be something else. And so in this chapter, I argue that you don't find your voice. You actually need to remove everything standing in the way of it. And so I don't give you specific tips on you should speak up by doing A, B, C, D, and doing this. I actually give you a framework that encourages you to really, step 1, look at your authenticity. Like, what do you know for sure about you? What are the facts of the situation, or the facts we know about you, your unique skills, your unique talents? And then step 2, how do I speak up in alignment with my values? So that's the how of speaking up. Like, how do I say this in a way that if I hear it coming out of my mouth, I'm still going to feel good about it. That a week from today, when I have to speak up on a tough issue and I've done it in alignment with my values, I can walk away feeling good about what I had to say, even if it was hard news or tough feedback. So authenticity, alignment, and then the last one is action, because we can get an analysis paralysis if we just stay in the authenticity and alignment place. But the action question is, based on what I know for sure about me and what I value in this situation, what is mine to say or not say? For my extroverts, they love that. They're like, I need to know what is not mine to say, because if I'm not careful, I'll speak up on everything. And then I end up getting projects that aren't mine. I end up speaking out of turn. And so that just asks you to be really conscious and intentional about what is mine to say. I wrote this whole book using that model. What do I know for sure about me, my unique skills and talents, and the view that I can offer the world? How do I want to say things in this book that feel in alignment with my values, so that 3 years after this book is published, I can still feel good about what I said? And then really asking myself, what is mine to speak up on, and what is not mine to speak up on? And what do I need to cut from the book? And I think using our voice, I would really encourage you to think about, have you been inspired by another woman speaking up? And if the answer is yes, I want you to remember the power that comes from you speaking up, because when you speak up, you inspire other women to do the same. So the 3 big ideas from this book in terms of boosting your potential at work are from chapter 3, It Pays to Be Yourself. When you show up as yourself and step into your own power, like, that's what makes you, you. When you show up like someone else, it takes away the power that makes you, you. Chapter 4 is align your purpose and your paycheck. And owning your talents is the antidote to imposter syndrome. And owning your talents, noticing what surges your energy, helps you be more conscious and intentional about creating a career you love. And then finally, amplify your voice and make an impact. And this is the whole thought that you're not going to find your voice. Your voice is already inside you, and you'll find it when you remove everything standing in the way of it. And when you speak up, you inspire others to do the same. And you can do that by owning what's unique about you, speaking up in alignment with your values, and saying what is yours to say, and not saying what is not yours to say. So I hope that you will check out this book. It officially launches on November 1st, everywhere books are sold, on all of your favorite platforms, audio, Kindle, hardcover, etc. And yeah, I would just love your support. And if you have any questions, you can PM me, you can let me know. Otherwise, you can tell your friends to check this book out on November 1st. And if you order before November 1st, there's lots of pre-order bonuses on my website. And you can find those by going to Closing the Confidence Gap, just the title of my book, Closing the Confidence Gap /book. So thank you for coming today. Next week, we're going to talk about the last part of that, which is how to boost your paycheck. And so next Tuesday session is going to be all about asking for what you want, asking for what you need, the money conversations that you need to have, and how to take those right next steps so that you can ultimately boost your paycheck at work. So hope you all have an awesome week. Great to see you here, and I will see you again next week.